So we have an amazing topic for today. It's the old saying that we've all kind of heard someplace or another. What you resist persists. And there's really so much depth to that saying. It's not just kind of a surface thing. It really goes to the core of our relationship with the world. And there's no better place to exemplify that than in our interpersonal relationships. So, all the people around us and our family, with our friends and our partners at work, neighbors, whenever there's tension, it's always 50% our part of the equation. It takes two to tango. When we want somebody to be somebody they're not, it's important to recognize that our wanting them to be different, our resistance to who they are, is actually keeping the dynamic in place. And so that's how we wind up perpetuating certain dynamics with certain people. And we never seem to come out of it. We lock horns. They want us to be like them, and we want them to be like us. And so there's resistance from both sides that ultimately leads to stalemate, if not even worse, just a clash of energies and opinions and whatnot. And so, but ultimately, that the resistance is what's keeping that whole situation in place. And same thing can be applied to pretty much anything in life. When we resist something, we're actually giving it our attention. We're giving it our attention in a particular way. So a thought comes along, this goes down to the thought level. And we don't want to think that thought. And then we wind up thinking that thought more and more, and it keeps returning and never goes away. Because there's something about when we resist something that actually we're engaging with it, and that is what keeps it alive. That's what keeps it in our experience. But it keeps it in our experience in the way we don't want it. And then we run into these loops. And the same thing kind of applies to manifestation. When we focus on what we don't want, then we're actually giving what we don't want our attention. And what we give our attention to, that's our life force. That's what we're keeping alive. So, bottom line is, when we're in resistance to something, we're keeping it alive in our experience. We're fueling it with our attention. And so the solution is to come out of resistance to something. And that is not to want that something to be different. The solution is always not to give it our attention, but to shift our attention to what we do want to have happen. Gratitude practice, that's what that's all about. Gratitude practice is so amazing because while initially it can start out broad, I'm grateful for my friends and the life I'm living and the roof over my head. If you commit yourself to a gratitude practice of even just a few minutes, or in your journaling, just a few sentences, a paragraph, you naturally start to zoom in to more and more detail. And it's in the detail that we then find presence, true presence. So it's really this beautiful thing. It's so simple, just to show appreciation, gratitude for what we have, the people around us, and the meal on our plate in front of us, right? So it starts to narrow our attention down to the detail of what's really right in front of us, and that is an ever increasing state of presence. The more time we spend in gratitude, it just naturally pulls us into the present moment. And you realize that there's only things to be grateful for. It's hard to find anything in the present moment not to be grateful for. It's right there in front of you, and the fact that it exists, that you're engaging with it, enjoying it, that you have it, makes it beautiful. And that is an example of giving our attention, pulling it away from the things that we're in resistance to, and that's assigning it to things that, such as gratitude, such as visualizations, um, obviously meditation. There's lots of ways to assign our life force, our attention, to things that are not resistance in nature, but rather are that open us up to inviting gratitude. We mentioned seeing opportunities that we would otherwise not see because we're in resistance to one thing. It really shrinks our perspective on a particular situation. There's that analogy of the 7 blind men, birth blind men, who come into a room with the elephant, and each one just grabs a different part of the elephant, and then they think the elephant is the one that grabs the tail, that it's a bottle brush, and the one that grabs the leg is a trunk, and so forth. I've mentioned this before. And so our perspective starts to shrink when we're in resistance to something. It attracts all of our attention, and then we only see this one thing that we're in resistance to. And there's so much more about every situation, about every person, so many more perspectives, so many more angles that we're missing because we're kind of hooked, attached ourselves to this one piece that we're in resistance to. And let me see, there's a question there. Oh, thank you for that. Yes. We can all be grateful for each other and that we're here right now. That's a perfect thank you for bringing that up, Ida. And it's being present and keeping life simple, and really giving our attention to something that is basically the opposite of resistance, right? That we want to invite more of that. People that are equal or elevating, that we, send them a little note, a note of appreciation, or a phone call or message, that we, in our relationship with ourselves, that we take a moment to maybe some activity that we really enjoy, go for a walk in nature. And I know, Ingrid, you love to do that. And maybe listening to a favorite song, or the painting kit that we haven't used in a while. Bring that out from the corner, and so our quality of life is dependent on the things we give our attention to. And resistance is a type of attention that really it narrows our perspective. It shrinks down our view. It doesn't feel good. It keeps us kind of engaged in lower frequencies. And ultimately, most importantly, the change that we're desiring so much from being in resistance to something never comes, because we're holding that whole dynamic in place with our resistance to it. Again, that's the foundation of law of attraction and our manifestation powers, is we are ultimately attracting that which we give our attention to. And that's it. Simple as that. Yes, Stephanie.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you again, Chris. Can you give an example of how you would, if you notice that you're thinking, how you would use gratitude to shift away without it being in resistance? This has been a recurring theme for me. So I'm new to like using the resistance to pull attention to redirect attention, but like how, without you being like, I'm thinking, let me go be grateful to something in resistance to thinking in the first place.
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you, Stephanie. You're always the one to like ask for examples, which is so important. So thank you. So I would say awareness of the quality of our thoughts is first and foremost, right? So if you can be aware of the character, the traits of the thoughts that you're thinking, then you have a lot more say in whether or not you want to give your attention to something. We still get pulled into some of these resistive thoughts, resisting thoughts that are resistance in nature. And that's okay. That's going to happen. But with greater awareness, we come out of those sooner. That's what the whole mindfulness practice is about, is you catch your mind having gone down a particular path sooner. And that's the identification with that thought that owns us, that we want to come out of, so that we own the thought, if you will, more than the thought owns us. So it's really just being in tune with the quality and the nature of thoughts, which ultimately runs again through our body, right? So being in touch with about how a thought makes us feel. Divisive thoughts, resisting thoughts, combative thoughts, even comparative thoughts, thoughts that just compare. The more you practice, the more you sense the vibration of these, the quality of these thoughts. And there comes a point where you just refuse to engage with these lower frequency thoughts. It just doesn't feel good. And also towards yourself, right, is to notice the power of your words, or the thought, what you say to yourself, or the thoughts about yourself, self-criticism, self-loathing, and self-judgment. There's these are thoughts, ultimately, or words that we say to ourselves in certain contexts. And to start noticing the frequency, if you will, the quality of those thoughts, is the best way out. So noticing is your awareness, the noticing part, and that keeps us in a place of observation. And even if we get lost in a particular thought, start to go down a rabbit hole of recounting a conversation we had, or I should have done this better, or the email you sent earlier was, we start to regurgitate and loop around these things. But with more mindfulness throughout your day, throughout your life, you catch yourself sooner thinking these, like, that's not a good feeling thought. You just let it go without even the need to justify to yourself why you're letting it go. It's just more intuitively you start to sense, this doesn't feel good. I'm feeling it right here. I'm just going to let that go. So it's not really a conscious decision to like, oh, this is I don't want to be thinking this anymore, so I'm going to put my thought to something else. It's more of a feeling of, this doesn't feel good to have these thoughts. I just went down a rabbit hole. I got lost, bringing myself back, and that too is just an emotional kind of experience of like, that didn't feel good. What does feel good? Reaching for a better feeling thought. It always runs through our feelings, always through our emotions. Does that kind of answer it?
Yes, and that's where I find myself. Like, I'll notice that the thoughts are happening. So I'm noticing, I'm not in awareness because the thoughts are, but I notice the thoughts, and then I'll be like, man, the thoughts don't feel good. I can feel in my body, they don't feel great. But I have a harder time, like, just getting out of that. Like, I don't want to feel this way. And then I'll try to redirect my thoughts, but then I find that I still come, like, my mind still tries to pull me back.
Yes.
Or like, and I can't tell if like it's just a conditioned behavior that I've created, or the mind. I don't mean to be so nebulous, but
No.
I can't tell. I'm trying to redirect without being in resistance. So since I've been joining your calls, that's kind of where I keep, and I haven't, like, it's gotten better, but I still am like, ugh, I hate how I can tell how it feels in my body and I don't enjoy it. But I guess I just need to label it as not enjoying it. Or is that the awareness?
So
Uh,
yes, this is fantastic. It sounds like the thinking mind has, as Eckhart would say, still has a lot of momentum. So there's the awareness now of those thoughts, which is great. And lots of it too, it sounds like. And still just kind of the dealing with thoughts, engaging with thoughts, we're trying to work with those thoughts, and it that needs to be offset, it sounds like, with more of a self-care practice and self-love thing, and or passions that you have. Like the more you have like a really solid base of things that you like feeling, that you enjoy doing, that bring up just a swell of, you know, positive, good feeling, you know, thoughts or emotions, to then then it's easier to go to that, to shift to that. Gratitude practice is a great example, and it really doesn't take a lot. I don't know if you already do anything like that, but journaling, you know, once a day of all the things you're grateful for, and um, and then throughout the day, I'm a big fan of not just doing something once a day, like meditating in the morning, and then you just kind of go live the rest of your day separately, or just journaling and then just kind of like living your day again. Integrating some of that into the day is always best, because it keeps that positive momentum. You're building that. Otherwise, you know, just 5 minutes of journaling, then you have your whole day. It's hard to build that kind of like foundation of just good vibes if you're living most of the day that, you know, the way you used to, and then trying to kind of offset that with some mindfulness practices. So I would say look at your existing routines, and again, this is where presence through the senses with those existing routines can be so powerful. So that even if you're making your bed in the morning, appreciating your bed and the hopefully good night's rest that you had, and feeling the fabric, you know, it's Egyptian cotton or whatever, satin, 800, 1200 count, the color of it, really engaging through the senses. There's gratitude in that. There's basically presence is built in gratitude for what is. And so you can, if you choose just a couple things, 3-4 things that you do every day, and the one thing that you now add to those routines is something like, if you have a dog that you take for a walk, right? Conscious walking, you know, I appreciate my shoes that I have, or something, that there's opportunity in there to deepen that experience that you're already having anyway. So you're not having to come up with a whole new routine or another to-do item. So
And if it was you walking the dog, like could you, what would that, not to, no pun intended, can you walk me through like how you would reground yourself? Or if you find yourself in thoughts, you're walking the dog, would you be thinking, you know, like, or would you be feeling in your body? Or
yeah, so you want to be feeling the shoes on your feet, and each step that you take. A bridge, it shouldn't be, it's more of a bridge than anything, but you can count your steps, right? That's already what kind of narrows your focus down to like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So there's a lot of traditions that you know, counting and chanting and visualization that are all kind of that. I think ultimately it's still a bridge, because you want to get to a place where you don't need those things anymore, but it can help in the meantime. So I would be, you know, noticing the fabric of the clothes on that you're wearing. If it's early in the morning, maybe there's a cool breeze, and feel that going, and just really sink into your senses. If the dog is pulling on the leash, you can feel that, right? There's a tactile explosion of things, really, when you're walking a dog. It's like there's so much there, even when you're picking up after them, him or her, right? There's just it's a full of sensations and a sensual kind of experience. And you can't help but feel good doing that when we're in our senses. It just because it pulls us into presence. So there's just an appreciation that's built into that. Does that resonate? Okay, yeah, that's great
Definitely.
questions. Um, and I would really I would look at what you're currently doing and then just do it with in a deeper way, right? In a more connected way. Because you what it sounds like you really want to just kind of build up more opportunities for joy during the day, so that that has more momentum, that has more volume, if you will. And then these thoughts that come along, depressing thoughts, troubling thoughts, unsavory thoughts, just unpleasant thoughts, that there's a more volume of goodness, good vibes that you can shift to and more easily. Because but depending on the thoughts, you kind of want a whole arsenal of good vibes, right? A whole just like a whole toolbox. Um, because different thoughts, if they're kind of negative thoughts, they could you need more troops, more positive troops that you can fall back on and kind of shift to. So that's a really interesting thing. Another thing to focus on, I would say, is that gap between your awareness of a thought that doesn't feel good and where in your body do you feel the challenge, and how are you experiencing that challenge in your body of shifting to a better feeling thought? Is there resistance in that? Right? We're talking about resistance. Is there actual resistance to shifting to a better feeling thought? So there can be some insight in there, um, in terms of allowing yourself to feel better sooner or faster, right? There's something in there maybe, um, that if you shine the light of your awareness, so we're zooming in even more here, you're aware of the thoughts, but zooming into what's happening there, you have the awareness of the thought, what's happening in your body to that is not allowing you to shift right away to something, a better feeling thought. I would look at that little window and see what's going on there.
They're not necessarily even like overtly negative thoughts, but it's like I'm washing dishes, or as a woman, you're like doing your hair. You have all these different extended periods of time that you're doing a task, even making the bed or cleaning up. And like I'll catch myself. Um, I have like I'll go back to books. Like I have books that I'll like go and read to give me like some sense of peace or presence. But then like when I'm doing stuff, I haven't yet found a way to just, I'm not saying I'll ever be thought free. I actually learned that from you. So I'll never be like fully thought free. But I just haven't found a way to like pull myself and stay from getting lost in thought again while I'm doing a task.
Ah,
I'll notice
okay.
it, and then I'll go, and then it just like a few seconds later, it like pulls me back into thinking.
Yeah. Okay, so there's two parts of that. One is it's okay to have those thoughts. So that a level of acceptance of just like, here's a thought, here it comes, there it is, and really, really being okay with that thought, allowing it fully. So again, there's an inkling of resistance to, I don't want to be thinking this. Why am I lost in thought again? That actually keeps us engaged with it more than we want. So the complete acceptance of allowing thoughts to be there when they arise, they'll always arise. That's the only difference between a Zen master and a simple person. I don't know what to say. Is that the Zen master just doesn't get triggered by the thoughts. He just observes the thoughts. has the same number of thoughts, maybe they get a little less, because resistance actually fuels more thoughts. Resistance has that thought coming back over and over. So as you come out of resistance, you'll have fewer thoughts, or certainly fewer repeating thoughts. Thoughts will still come around. It's just there's so much going on. We have I don't know, trillions and trillions of cells in us. They're engaging with the environment. There's so much going on, so much aliveness, and all of that brings thoughts to the surface. And there's so much in our subconscious. So there's just thoughts going to be there. And to step one, I would say, is to really accept the thought, observe it fully. There's a thought, not wanting it to be there. That's kind of the first thing, to detach yourself. And the second step is to then shift your attention to something that is better feeling. So the shifting your attention to something that's better feeling is being held back by some resistance to the thought being there in the first place. And with some practice, you can, I mean, really, it's thoughts are there. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing bad about them. When you notice that your mind has drifted, that moment of noticing that's the key moment of frustration or no frustration. That's the key moment of I've realized the reality of the moment is not what I want it to be, meaning my attention I was lost in thought. Am I going to accept that present moment fully? And with that full acceptance, you can now shift your attention to where you do want your attention to go, right? Which is the task at hand, and being present even with folding laundry and so forth. So that's that little moment right there. The noticing is the coming out of the lost in thought state. And if you can notice with as little frustration, with as little friction, with as little resistance as possible, just bring your attention back to where you want it to be. That is the drill. And that's what meditators do over and over and over and over and over and over. To this day, I'll have some days my mind is super busy, and I'll spend 57 minutes out of the whole hour lost in thought. But the few seconds that I'm able to notice I was just lost in thought, bring my attention back, that's the important part. Not the amount of time spent being present, but the fluidity with which I can bring my attention back to where I want it to be without being in resistance to the moment of presence, of noticing that the reality is not where I want it to be, right? That's that peace that Eckhart always talks about, right? The making peace with what is, the isness of the moment. So that is that moment of noticing that your mind had drifted. You've just come out of it. And that isness of that moment is what full acceptance is demanded. And with that acceptance, then you can turn your attention to things that you want to fuel. So it's kind of a dry drill. And just to sit there, I do Vipassana 10-day silent retreats once or twice a year for many, many years now. And that's all you do is for 10 hours a day. You sit there and you just observe your thoughts. And when you get lost, you notice, oh, I was lost, and you bring your attention back to in that exercise to the breath. And it's what we do at the end of this session. That's essentially the same drill that you were just addressing, is when we notice our mind is drifted and we bring our attention back to the incoming and outgoing breath at the entrance of our nostrils. That is training that muscle to be able to notice and redirect. Notice and redirect to where you want your attention to be. And you just have to do it over and over. But there's so much power and so much magic in that, right? So that every single day, life around us is happening in ways that we don't want it to be. And to observe it, notice it. Oh, it's not how I want it to be. And I'm going to take action now, right? Noticing and then redirecting your attention to I'm going to take action so that I am doing what I want to do, and I am putting my attention where I want it to go. So it's just repetition, and it'll happen. And the improvement is kind of minute. It's very gradual, but it is permanent. So you'll catch yourself lost in thought. You'll come out of it a few seconds sooner, and then a few extra seconds, and you're able to then stay with, not get lost in thought a few seconds longer. And we've just been so conditioned to be in our heads and noisy and judging constantly. So it's a strong kind of noise machine that we carry in our heads. And but you can absolutely come out of it. It's literally the amount of time you put in is the benefit that you get out. And everyone can do this. Everyone has breath is the simplest way to do this. Even when you're, maybe this is another tip, when you're, even though you're doing the laundry or you're washing the dishes and you notice your mind has drifted, rather than come back to the dishes or the laundry, actually come back to your breath, because it's even more precise. It's even more simple of a target. The dishes is it's hard, like what do you actually focus on there, what's in front of you, but the breath is so singularly right there at the entrance of your nose. So try that. Yeah, good stuff. Awesome. Please let me know, let everyone here know how it goes. Yeah, awesome.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, let me take a okay. All right. So how are we doing on time here? So we are perfect on time. In fact, unless there are other questions, we can then go into that exercise. And that's exactly as we were just saying. That's the point of it, is to keep our attention to where we want it to be, in this instance, on our breath. And our mind's going to drift. Thoughts are going to come in within a few seconds, and we'll notice those thoughts. And then some thoughts will really grab us, and we really go down a rabbit hole. And it might be however long, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, that before we notice that we were lost in thought. And then again comes the crucial moment. That moment when you notice is, are you going to be in resistance to the fact that you've been lost in thought? Or are you going to accept, see it as it is, make peace with the isness, the present moment that you were just lost this entire time, and then smoothly bringing your attention back to your breath. That's all it is. Yeah. All right. Okay. With that said, let's get into a comfortable position. Ideally spine straight, bones stacked. And with our eyes and mouth closed, let's focus on the incoming and outgoing breath at the entrance of our nostrils. If you have trouble locating your breath, you may breathe slightly harder once or twice. And then return your breath to natural breath, normal breath. Seeing your breath as it is, not wanting it to be different. Let the detail of your breath pull you in closer. it's more in the left nostril, let it be the left nostril. If it's more in the right nostril, let it be the right nostril. Or if it's in both nostrils, let it be in both nostrils. Notice the temperature of the incoming breath. Notice the temperature of the outgoing breath. And notice if there's a difference. Notice the pace of the incoming breath. Notice the pace of the outgoing breath. And notice if there's a difference. And whenever you find that your mind has wandered, simply notice it, and with as little frustration as possible, bring your attention back to the incoming and outgoing breath at the entrance of your nostrils. When you're ready, you may gradually open your eyes. Notice your environment. Notice yourself in your environment. Notice the energy in your body. Notice your aliveness. So I thank you all for joining. To summarize our session today, the less we are in resistance to what is, the sooner we invite change. But it's all a process, and there's never a need to get down on ourselves. It's all working out perfectly. We're all doing our best always. And we're all here and grateful for each other's presence. So I wish you all a wonderful rest of your Sunday. And we'll see you next time. Have a great week.